Reading exposes you to new vocabulary in a natural and effortless way, allowing you to absorb words without feeling the pressure of memorizing them. When you read stories, articles, or even simple English captions, you encounter words used in real contexts, which helps you understand not only their meaning, but also how they fit into sentences. This natural exposure is far more powerful than learning words from a list, because your brain connects the new vocabulary with situations, emotions, and actions. For example, when you read a story about someone struggling to climb a mountain, you understand words like exhausted, determined, or breathtaking through the character's experiences. These connections strengthen memory, making the words stay in your mind longer and more securely. As you continue reading regularly, your mind starts recognizing patterns. You notice synonyms, descriptive phrases, and expressions that native speakers commonly use. This exposure slowly expands your vocabulary without you even realizing it. You may find yourself using words in speaking that you never actively studied, but learned simply by seeing them repeatedly while reading. The more diverse the reading material, the richer your vocabulary becomes. Reading fiction introduces you to emotional and descriptive language, while reading articles helps you learn formal and informational vocabulary. Each type of content adds another layer to your word bank, making your speech more flexible and expressive. Another important benefit of reading for vocabulary growth is the reinforcement effect. Every time you see a new word in a different sentence or situation, your brain strengthens the meaning and usage of that word. It becomes easier to recall when needed because your mind has stored multiple examples of how it is used. This repeated exposure trains your memory to retrieve words quickly during conversations. Instead of pausing to search for the right word, you naturally remember it. And this smooth recall improves the flow of your speech. Reading also introduces you to collocations, which are groups of words that commonly appear together in English. Examples include make a decision, take responsibility, or strong argument. When you learn these combinations through reading, your speaking immediately sounds more fluent and natural. Native speakers use collocations all the time, and reading helps you internalize them without forced memorization. This makes your speech sound more advanced and confident. Over time, as your vocabulary grows, your ability to speak clearly, accurately, and expressively strengthens, allowing you to communicate with greater confidence in any situation. Asterisk reading improves sentence structure in a way that feels natural, gradual, and deeply effective, especially for learners who want to speak English more clearly and confidently. When you read, your brain observes how sentences are built, how ideas are connected, and how thoughts are expressed in a smooth and logical order. This exposure teaches you the rhythm and framework of English without needing to memorize grammar rules directly, instead of studying complicated explanations about clauses or tenses. You learn how sentences work simply by seeing them again and again in different forms. Over time, you begin to notice how native speakers write and speak, how they join short sentences to make long ones, how they transition between ideas, and how they choose words to create clarity or emphasis. These patterns sink into your mind, helping you naturally use better sentence structures when you speak. When you read stories, articles, or conversations, you encounter a variety of sentence types, from very simple ones to more complex ones full of descriptive details. This variety is important because speaking effectively requires more than knowing basic sentences. You need to express reasons, describe situations, share opinions, and connect ideas smoothly. Reading gives you examples of all these sentence styles. You learn how writers use phrases such as on the other hand, as a result, in order to, or even though, which help make speech more meaningful and logically connected. When you begin to recognize these structures through reading, you naturally start using them in your own speech, which immediately improves your fluency and clarity. Instead of speaking in short, broken sentences, you begin forming longer and more complete sentences that express your thoughts fully and accurately. Another powerful benefit of reading is that it strengthens your understanding of grammar without making it feel like a burden. Many learners struggle with grammar when studying it directly, but when you see grammar being used correctly in context, it becomes easier to absorb and remember. For example, reading helps you understand when to use past perfect, how to place adjectives in the correct order, why prepositions change depending on the situation, or how to use conditional sentences to express possibilities. You may not realize that you are learning grammar, but your brain naturally copies the structures you see repeatedly. Later, when you speak, these patterns emerge naturally, making your sentences more accurate and polished. This unconscious learning is one of the strongest advantages of reading because it builds your language foundation quietly. But effectively, reading also improves your sense of coherence, which means the ability to keep your ideas connected and understandable. When you read well-written English, you observe how writers move from one idea to the next without confusion. They use linking words, transition phrases, and logical sequencing to guide the reader smoothly. As you read more, your brain internalizes this flow. When you speak, you start organizing your thoughts the same way, making it easier for others to follow your ideas. You become more confident expressing complex thoughts because you have seen how they are structured in written form. Another advantage is that reading provides countless examples of natural English expressions that help shape better sentences when speaking. You learn how to start a sentence politely, how to soften a strong opinion, how to ask questions more naturally, and how to express emotions clearly. These expressions become part of your speaking style, and using them correctly makes your speech sound more fluent and native-like. Reading dialogue is especially helpful for this because it teaches you how real conversations flow. Overall, reading plays a major role in building stronger sentence structure because it exposes you to real examples of English being used effectively. With each page you read, your brain absorbs new patterns, learns how ideas are connected, and stores better ways to express yourself. Over time, this constant exposure transforms your speaking, helping you communicate your thoughts clearly, confidently, and naturally. Reading out loud strengthens pronunciation, fluency, and confidence because it trains your mouth, tongue, and voice to produce English sounds regularly. When you read silently, your mind understands the words, but your speaking muscles remain inactive. However, when you read aloud, you force yourself to practice the physical side of speaking, which is essential for improving pronunciation. As you pronounce words repeatedly, your mouth becomes more familiar with difficult sounds. Your tongue movements become smoother, and your voice becomes stronger. This practice reduces hesitation because the sounds begin to feel natural. Even if you do not have a partner to speak with, reading aloud gives you a powerful speaking workout that sharpens your ability to produce English clearly and confidently. Another important benefit of reading aloud is the development of natural rhythm and intonation. English is not spoken word by word, but rather in connected phrases with rises, falls, and natural pauses. When you read aloud, you begin to follow the melody of English sentences. You learn where to pause, which words to stress, and how to express emotions through your voice. This improves your fluency because your speech becomes smoother and more continuous. Instead of speaking in a slow, robotic way, you start speaking in a more natural and expressive manner. Regular practice helps you build flow, which is one of the biggest challenges for learners who know many words but cannot speak smoothly. Reading aloud also improves your listening skills in an indirect but powerful way. When you hear your own voice, you become more aware of mistakes, mispronunciations, and areas that need improvement. This self-feedback helps you adjust your speech in real time. The more you listen to yourself, the better you become at recognizing correct and incorrect sounds. You may even start comparing your voice to native speakers and adjusting your tone to sound closer to them. This awareness boosts your confidence because you begin to trust your ability to speak correctly. Another advantage is that reading aloud reduces the fear of speaking. Many learners feel nervous when talking to others, but reading aloud provides a safe space to practice without pressure. You can repeat sentences as many times as needed, slow down when necessary, or even exaggerate pronunciation to improve clarity. This private practice makes you more comfortable using your voice. Over time, this comfort turns into confidence, making real-life speaking situations feel less intimidating. As you continue reading aloud, your pronunciation sharpens, your fluency grows, and your speaking confidence becomes stronger than ever. Reading develops English thinking by gradually training your mind to process ideas, words, and sentences directly in English instead of translating from your native language. When you read regularly, your brain becomes used to seeing English in its natural structure. This constant exposure allows your mind to absorb the patterns, rhythm, and logic of the language without effort. Over time, you start understanding sentences instantly instead of breaking them down or translating them word by word. This shift is extremely important because speaking fluently depends on thinking quickly. If your mind is stuck in translation, your speech becomes slow and hesitant. But when you think in English, your sentences come out smoothly, naturally, and confidently. Reading also helps you build mental associations directly in English. For example, when you read a story about someone feeling joyful, the word joyful becomes connected in your mind with the feeling itself, rather than with a word in your first language. These direct connections strengthen your ability to express emotions, ideas, and thoughts clearly when speaking. The more you read, the more of these mental links you develop, allowing English words to appear in your mind automatically. This automatic recall is one of the biggest signs that you are starting to think in English rather than translating. Another powerful way reading shapes your thinking is through exposure to different writing styles, dialogues, descriptions, and expressions. Each time you read, you see how English is used to express opinions, describe situations, or explain ideas. Your brain stores these examples and later uses them when you speak. You may find yourself repeating phrases or sentence patterns you have seen many times in books or articles without even realizing it. This is because reading builds a mental library of language that your brain draws from automatically. This silent training is much more effective than memorizing rules or forcing yourself to think in English. Reading also develops your inner voice in English. When you read silently, you hear the words in your mind. This inner voice slowly begins to switch from your native language to English, helping you form thoughts faster and more accurately. When your inner voice starts thinking in English, speaking becomes easier because your brain is already prepared with the right words and structure. This reduces pauses, increases fluency, and gives you greater confidence in expressing your thoughts. Through consistent reading, your thinking naturally becomes aligned with the language, allowing you to communicate with clarity, ease, and confidence. Reading boosts listening and speaking skills because it exposes you to the natural flow and structure of English, even when you're not actively practicing with another person. When you read, especially when you read dialogue or conversational text, your brain imagines the tone, pauses, and rhythm of how those sentences would sound if spoken aloud. This mental simulation strengthens your listening skills because you begin to recognize how English is naturally used. The more you read, the more you understand patterns of speech such as connected words, emphasis, and natural phrasing. This familiarity helps you listen more accurately in real conversations, because your ears are trained to expect the way English normally sounds. As a result, when someone speaks to you, you are able to understand them more easily since your mind has already absorbed these patterns. Through reading, another important effect of reading on listening and speaking is vocabulary recognition. When you listen to others speak English, you often hear words you already know from reading, because you have seen these words many times in different contexts. Your brain quickly understands them when you hear them. This reduces confusion and allows you to follow conversations more smoothly. Additionally, reading introduces you to new expressions and sentence structures that you later hear in movies, conversations, or audio. When your mind is already familiar with these patterns, your listening comprehension improves naturally. This increased understanding then helps your speaking, because you can mimic the language you hear with greater accuracy. Reading also strengthens speaking skills by giving you models of how thoughts are expressed in English. When you read dialogues, interviews, stories, and articles, you learn how people ask questions, respond politely, share opinions, disagree respectfully, or explain ideas clearly. These models become part of your communication style. You begin to use similar patterns when speaking, not because you memorize them, but because your mind absorbed them through repeated reading. Over time, you find yourself using expressions and sentence structures that sound more fluent and natural, just like those you see in books or stories. Another powerful benefit is that reading helps improve your mental speed in English. When you read regularly, your brain gets used to processing English quickly. This faster processing makes it easier to keep up with spoken English and respond without long pauses. You no longer need to think too hard about grammar or vocabulary because your mind already recognizes the patterns. This boosts your speaking confidence because you know you can follow conversations and respond smoothly. By continuously reading, you train both your ears and your voice, creating a strong foundation that supports clear listening, accurate understanding, and fluent speaking. Reading increases your confidence because it gives you constant exposure to English in a safe, pressure-free environment where you can learn at your own pace. When you read regularly, you begin to notice how sentences are formed, how ideas are expressed, and how vocabulary is used naturally. This familiarity removes the fear of the unknown. Many people feel nervous speaking because they worry they might say something incorrectly, but reading shows you correct English again and again, building trust in your own ability to use the language. The more you read, the more comfortable you become with the structure and flow of English, and this comfort slowly grows into confidence when you speak. Another reason reading boosts confidence is that it gives you a larger collection of words and expressions to use. When you read stories, articles, or conversations, you learn new phrases that help you express yourself more clearly. Knowing the right words makes speaking easier because you do not feel stuck or embarrassed when trying to explain your thoughts. Each new word you learn becomes a tool that strengthens your communication. When you speak and successfully use the vocabulary you learned from reading, your confidence rises even more. This creates a positive cycle where reading helps you speak better, and speaking better encourages you to read even more. Reading also removes the pressure of real-time conversation. You can practice pronunciation, expression, and fluency by reading, aloud alone, without worrying about making mistakes in front of others. This private practice builds your comfort with using your voice in English. When you repeat sentences, imitate dialogue, or follow the rhythm of a story, you become more natural in your speaking style. Over time, this practice reduces hesitation and helps you speak with a steady, calm tone. By the time you speak with someone else, you already feel prepared because you have practiced many times through reading. Most importantly, reading expands your imagination and helps you visualize yourself as a confident English speaker. When you see characters expressing emotions, solving problems, and communicating smoothly, you begin to imagine yourself doing the same. These mental images motivate you and strengthen your belief that you, too, can speak fluently. Confidence is not something that appears suddenly. It is something that grows quietly inside you through consistent practice and positive experiences. Reading provides both of these in a simple and enjoyable way, helping you transform from a hesitant speaker into someone who communicates with clarity and self-belief, allowing your English to shine beautifully every time you speak.